Hello, everyone, and welcome to Paula's Soapbox Live. Tonight's guest is a rising young filmmaker and musician. His latest movie, Killian and the Comeback Kids, promises to be the perfect blend for his talents. An Indiegogo campaign has been set up to help with post production costs, but I think there are only like 6 hours left in the campaign. So after the interview, be sure to check that out because there's a lot of cool perks going on. So, here to talk about all of that is Taylor Purdee.
Hey, thanks for
Hey,
letting us hang out with you.
absolutely. Thank you for coming on. I know you're pretty busy right now trying to get this film up and running.
Yeah. And the last couple of weeks have been way more of the talking about it than I would normally do at this phase. But it's
Yeah.
kind of nice to have an early press run and find who's into it. It's got so many different groups of people, like the soap fans and the black film fans and the folk music fans. So it's nice to start to meet everybody early.
Yeah. Well, before we get into all of that, I want to talk a little bit about your background and some of the projects that have led up to Killing and the Comeback Kids.
Yeah.
So your parents started a production company called Karmic Release. You're actually the VP of this company, correct?
Technically, yeah. I guess that's true.
So it has being a part of this kind of helped you to get people involved in your projects and maybe get
Oh,
them off the ground a little
yeah.
faster?
I mean, 100%. I mean, I've been saying a lot lately that my folks kind of bred me for all of this, but
Yeah.
definitely having both of my parents. So Nathan Purdee, who is a soap actor who I'm sure a lot of your people know, and my mother is kind of on the whole flip side of that. She's a documentarian. Her name is Roberta Morris Purdee, and her films are generally like detailed social action, like going to Baghdad in the middle of the war kind of films. So this dichotomy when I was growing up between the scripts that would come in when Nathan was on One Life to Live with Cassie,
Right.
and all of the crazy things that could happen in Landview, and then Roberta would be making something about the war or overcoming Down syndrome when you're a Jewish boy trying to go to your bar mitzvah. So I definitely grew up with a pretty eclectic look at what films could be, but because both of them had such interesting careers and such disparate careers, I definitely have a kind of an archive, and they have a fan base of such a wide, disparate group of people that if I want to make something with soap operas, I know those people. If I want to make a documentary about the problems of Central America, I know those people. So yeah, definitely, Roberta and Nathan came in handy.
Yeah. You have a nice mix there of resources to draw on.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, you made a film a while back called This is Honduras.
Yeah,
And it was your debut, I think,
yeah. It was
feature length
actually
documentary.
the first film I'd ever made. I'd never made anything before it.
So I've read a little bit about it. It sounds like a pretty ambitious project.
Yeah. I was 19 when we shot most of it. It was kind of I didn't have anything else to do that summer, and it just kind of spiraled into this thing that we premiered about a year ago. And I'm told it's been on a shelf at HBO for about a year, which happens more often than you'd expect. So I'm trying to find a safe home for that. It's about Honduras. Honduras is the murder capital of the world, which
Mhm.
most people don't realize. But primarily, it's about the relationship between the NGOs and the humanitarian aid workers and the political system, which it's one of the few countries where you can only be president for 4 years ever. Except this is the first time that that's changed. This past election in December was the first time that a president won a second term. And that guy actually, long before he was president, was kind of the equivalent of Speaker of the House. And he's in our movie. And now he's president, and it's a big problem, and nobody knows if he should be. But Juan Orlando was an interesting guy when we met
Yeah.
him.
So, what made you decide to make this film other than the fact that you didn't really have anything else going on that summer?
I mean, it really was that. That film came about in a really roundabout way. I had a college roommate who had grown up being a humanitarian aid worker, and he'd gone down kind of like over spring break of our freshman year of college and came back and was all fired up and like wanted to tell the story of these people. And really it was that I had nothing better to do that summer, and my mother's a documentarian, so I figured, why not, we'll do it, we'll see what we can make out of it.
Right,
And
let's go to the murder capital of the world.
exactly, we were 19, we were dudes, what else were we going to do? It felt
Yeah.
very natural. We had knives, we felt safe. The knives
Yeah.
were probably a bad idea.
Perfectly fine. So, can people watch this film now?
Not yet. We're keeping it under wraps
Okay.
for another couple months or so, but you can see a lot of the trailers and behind the scenes stuff if you go to karmicrelease.com and all of that.
Yeah. Okay, well, as everyone knows, and as I mentioned in the opening, you were also a musician. And I read about a couple of interesting encounters you had performing around New York City. I'm
Yeah.
sure you've got many more than the ones that I read about, but the one that I read was that you were in Central Park and you had like an impromptu jam session with a bunch of middle schoolers.
Yeah. So maybe last summer, I play folk music and I busk. It's street music, and folk music and street music go hand in hand, and there's a long history there. And one day I was playing at a Bethesda fountain, which is where the boathouse is. It's where the dance sequence in The Producers takes place. It's got the big angel. You'd recognize it.
Yeah.
And I play there a lot. And one day, this woman came up to me and was like, "Hey, I don't mean to interrupt, but I've got this group of middle school girls, and we're here on this field trip, and they're like musical theater kids." And I was like, "Well, stop right there," because I had gone through a performing arts high school, so I knew that scene. And they were like, "Would it be okay if the girls came and sang with you?" And of course, why not? I mean, a big reason I started playing music in the street was kind of because I live a rather solitary monastic existence, and I wanted to make new friends. So these kids came up and we did a song from Jekyll and Hyde, which was a Broadway musical years ago, and then a real like folk rock cover of Miley Cyrus's Pirate Party in the USA. Like 15, 20 kids, great time. Nobody knew what key we were in. It was a blast.
Yeah.
It was a blast.
And it's something that they will never forget, I'm sure.
I hope so. I mean, I talked about this once kind of randomly for a different thing. But yeah, I mean, I think it was hopefully one of those moments that you remember for the rest of your life because you were 14 and everything's memorable when you're 14. But
Yeah.
it's a look at the big city and that you can make art anywhere and someone will listen and maybe give you $5. I can imagine I had a similar experience when I was 16 in London watching a street performer, and it stays with me to this day. A big part of Killian is probably because of that guy. So
Yeah.
I've been those girls before. I definitely have.
That's very cool. Well, speaking of girls, you were actually asked to be a part of a bachelorette party, I believe, at one point.
um, yeah. A couple months ago, it's probably what you're talking about. A really good friend of mine from high school was getting married, and me and another one of our friends were the bridesmaids. It was a great
Yeah.
time. We had really great outfits. Really great
Well,
outfits.
what I was thinking
Oh.
was a couple of years ago. I think I think again was in Central Park, and you ended up on a boat.
Oh my God. Oh yes, that was the first day I ever played in Central Park. And I made like $10 and was like, I am good. I have enough money to like almost go to the movies. It's great. And right when I was packing up, these girls rode up in one of the canoes that you can rent for $20 in Central Park and just kind of picked me up and put me in their boat. And I played Ed Sheeran for them. They were actually had a pretty interesting backstory in that they were first generation Indian immigrants to Canada who were having a bachelorette party in Manhattan. And we
Wow.
rode around the lake for 20 minutes and they, gave me $20. I went to the movies. It was great. It was a real like random summer day, but that was a blast. And I know way more about Ed Sheeran now than I ever did because of them.
Right. Yeah. So this sounds like it happens to you often, where people just approach you to kind of.
I mean, I've been saying for a long time that I look like I should be playing street music in the park. So I guess people just are more accepting then.
Yeah, I guess so. So what is Yippee Ki Do Cinema?
I'm so glad that you asked. So yeah, that's I mean, I guess it's almost the like flagship weekly or regular comic release thing. It's not one of the movies or anything.
Yeah.
But my college roommate and I, who actually is the second lead in Killian with me, a guy named John Donchak, maybe 2 years ago, we were getting really into biographies of Francois Truffaut, who's a legend. And this thing that they had started in Paris in the late 50s, called the Cahiers du Cinema, which in French translates to the cinema notebook, the notebook of movies. And it
Yeah.
was kind of just, it changed the way that we think of movies in the mainstream. The best, for instance, is that before those guys were writing, people thought of Alfred Hitchcock as just like a B horror movie director, and these dudes made him the legend, the auteur that he is.
Mhm.
So our version, the name is a combo of the idea of like yippee from Die Hard,
I
and
was gonna say Die Hard reference,
yes,
obviously.
exactly, and do cinema, but do the verb to do, obviously. And
Uh,
so it was the idea of combining high and low culture, but it started out as this podcast interview series where we take two people who are in the same art form but are spread across generations. One who's had a big career and one who's just had a first big break. So, for instance, a little bit before we shot this movie, we did an episode with Lee Grant, who's this great female director, movie star, Oscar winner, and a friend of ours from school who just got her first TV show named Olivia Macklin. Her show is LA to Vegas. It's a comedy on Fox. It
Yeah.
a couple weeks. So it's the Yippee Cinema is kind of a cross-generational look at what it takes to make any art in any given era. But on a weekly basis, there might not be an entire interview, but it's kind of spiraled into think pieces and artist galleries. And I think in a week or two, we're running a piece on this plus size model activist that I know pretty well. And that's going to be a whole interview with her about how like the Me Too movement has affected body positivity and a whole lot of really great photographs that we got to curate in a very wintry barn one day lately.
Cool. Very cool. Well, this is a random little factoid, and there's really no good segue for it. You once played, or your shadow once played, a 10-year-old Rosie O'Donnell. You know, I had to ask about this when I read it because
wow, yeah, God, the internet, yeah, Rosie O'Donnell. Yeah. That was so when I was about 10, my mother was producing a film for Lifetime that Lee Grant was directing, and it was about breast cancer. It was like a documentary look at breast cancer, you know, Lifetime television for women, I guess.
Yeah.
But Rosie O'Donnell's mother had died of breast cancer, I want to say. That might be anachronistic. But anyway, so there's a piece of the film where she's narrating her childhood, and we went to her childhood home, and they needed some like B-roll essentially to go under her narration. So they filmed my young shadow being her young shadow, so the narration could happen as like I was a kid and my mom was dying and it was sad.
Yeah,
you know, that kind of thing.
Well, doing that is a claim to fame that not everyone can.
Definitely. I actually, John and I about this time last year randomly did a little work for Rosie O'Donnell's kind of her nonprofit. She's got this great organization that teaches that supplies theater to inner city kids. Like they get big Broadway stars to come and teach these kids what it is to be a working actor. And John and I we've kind of made a piece on their big end of season performance thing. So Rosie O'Donnell's been bouncing around my life, I guess.
Yeah.
On the verge every now and then. Yeah, just randomly.
That's so cool. Well, let's talk about Killian and the Comeback Kids.
Sure.
So you produced it, you directed it, you wrote it, you star in it. You're pretty much involved in every aspect of this movie.
Yeah.
So for those who are not familiar with it, can you just tell us a little bit about what the film is?
Yeah, totally. So essentially it's the story of a young man who in the weeks after college graduates college and he's supposed to go off on a legitimate but tiny musical tour with his college roommate / like bandmate. And before he goes off on the tour, he stops in his rural hometown to pick up some stuff, say hi to his folks, take a break after graduating. And then kind of out of the blue, his partner like bails, gets a real job in the music industry and isn't going to do the tour. So my character finds himself stuck in this failing hometown, kind of with nothing, with no plan, no prospects. And it turns out that that's a very common experience. 1 out of every 3 millennials get stuck at home for 2 to 5 years after their exorbitantly priced educations. And then kind of through a chance encounter with the character played by John, who created the Yippee with me, he sees me playing street music on the street and kind of says, hey, man, you know, there are a bunch of us that are still stuck here. A ton of us didn't, you know, get to fly. And the only thing this town has going for it is this one big music festival, massive festival in the outskirts of town that's kind of legendary, but doesn't really deal with the locals. It just kind of like taps their resources in August. But this year, for whatever reason, they have 1 slot for a local act. So my character has to galvanize all the other like failure to launch kids to play this show and save the town with folk rock and dreams.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, you do have an Indiegogo campaign to help with the post-production costs. I think there's about 6 hours left.
There are, but there are some great perks, like you said.
There are some awesome perks left
too. Yeah, so if you're inclined for one of the, go and check it out. See if you're into any part of it. But if you like want a phone call or a music lesson with me and the other songwriter from the movie, lots of cool things.
Yeah, yeah, and if you were a soap opera viewer, there's a few things with Cassie DePaiva
Yeah.
that she's giving away. I think there's the last time I checked, the phone call with her
I
was
think there
still.
there are 2 phone calls left last I checked.
Yeah,
And so some of Cassie's music too. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, Cassie was a godsend. She's been lovely, like, the whole process. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, you've already made the film. So what happens if you don't meet your goal tonight? Is that just going to push things back some, or?
A little bit. So I have very kind of atypical feelings on crowdfunding for my generation. It's great and it can work wonderfully, but it's not the magic that we were told it was when like Veronica Mars got a movie. And I've
Yeah.
known that for a while. We crowdfunded some money for Honduras, and it's great. It's great because for me primarily, I wanted to do this crowdfunding because it was an early way to start to put together who our fan base was going to be. Like I said, there's so many different groups that are generally disparate and almost at odds with one another that this film is about and for.
Mm.
So the crowdfunding has definitely created the beginning of a conversation around that. But no, I mean, we're not gonna that crowdfunder is for like something like 50 grand, and we're not gonna make 50 grand in the next 6 hours.
No, not unless you get like a really generous
No,
benefactor, maybe.
but I don't think we were expecting to. The film will keep on going forward. It would be faster if I had $50,000 tonight, but no, we're still generally on track to. I want to be done making it by the end of the spring, so May
Yeah,
or June.
yeah,
And at this point, we're still going to do that. Though it'd be great to have a little help.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, like you said, there's still a lot of great perks up for grabs. Your father, as we mentioned, Nathan Purdee, who viewers will recognize from The Young and the Restless, Santa Barbara, One Life to Live, and Tainted Dreams, the web series.
Did
He
did
also,
Tainted Dreams get nominated for another Emmy? Like
yes, they did.
I
Yeah, they
I
did.
at like breakfast today. It's the holiday, so I'm at my parents' place, and
Yeah.
I asked them. We were all like, I guess yeah, season 2, the
They got
digital.
nominated for an Emmy, and Alicia Minshew got nominated for
Yeah,
an Emmy for that
and
too.
she followed
So,
me on Twitter today. I feel great.
yeah.
Yeah.
So your father is playing your father.
Yes, yes, he is. When I was a kid, my mother Roberta made me promise to always write roles for myself and my dad.
Yeah.
So this one was an easier way to do it because it was about a guy my age and he needed a dad. So yeah, Nathan plays my father, and it's not it's probably my favorite role I've ever written for him, and it's not the closest to his actual persona. I like kept a lot of the outward things about him. He's a very like stoic and quiet and strong presence, but in real life that comes because he's like thinking about something or brooding over the wrongs of the people. And in the movie, the character that he plays is kind of the last generation that we talk so much about this. Forgotten America and like industry shutting down. So Nathan's character was the foreman of the steel mill that closed down a few years ago, and so he is this kind of shadowy, broody presence in the film that aesthetically maybe I stole from Nathan in reality, but in actuality, he's playing a character. He's not a lot like that,
Yeah.
which is great to have such a good actor to like throw that at.
Yeah. And it's somebody you trust too. So
Oh yeah, I mean him and Cassie really. So most of the cast is like other 20 somethings that play the band.
yeah.
An 11-year-old girl who plays my little sister, and Cassie and Nathan. And Cassie and Nathan just came in, and every time they were on set, it would blow the crew away more than anybody else. That like the like strength and ease with which they could walk on set, hit a mark, do the lines exactly the same way, or change up whatever I wanted them to change. It was just a real treat to have such like pros, but also a real educational experience to see like the whole cast is made up of these wildly talented people from different backgrounds. The girl who plays John's love interest, who's her name's Shannon O'Boyle. She just got off of Kinky Boots on Broadway. She did Once on Broadway, so she's got this big theater background. And they're all like talented actors and musicians, but the different backgrounds were fascinating. And the fact that you know 30 years doing this could make a difference. Just a
Yeah.
difference with how easy it was to do.
Yeah. So has your father given you any advice with the film or with your film career in general?
Um, I guess he has with my film career. I suppose he's a little more laissez-faire in career things than I'd expect. To be honest, I think he's the the super supportive force, to the point where sometimes I have to like take what he says with a grain of salt because he's like being really, really, really supportive, and my mother's the one who's like, "You got to cut scene 3. Nobody cares."
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, definitely some of the only advice I ever got, and our whole circle are filmmakers and actors and screenwriters and costume designers. But some of the only advice I ever got was that you have to make your own work, which clearly I've taken to heart. But especially looking the way that I do. So I have been acting since I was a kid. And I found very early on, and actually one of the seminal moments was I went in to read for a script that Rosie O'Donnell was going to star in randomly. This is the most I've talked about Rosie O'Donnell ever. But I found really quickly that when you're casting things, I'm not black and I'm not white and I don't sound like I should be dealing you drugs. And it's this middle ground, this kind of no man's land in casting. And I get that as a person who casts things. There are very specific things that I could be right for, but I took that to heart definitely for Killian. And that's something that came from Nathan a bit, because right now, filmmaking is kind of getting a little more attention than it normally does. We talk about diversity and women's place in the echelons of film. I mean, we are under a lot of scrutiny politically and socially, more than maybe normally. We talk so much about diversity right now.
Yeah.
But it always felt to me like the best way to actually make a good diverse movie wasn't to have Don Cheadle play just like the nicest guy ever. You know, it wasn't about having minorities be exemplars of something. It was about having minorities be perfectly normal people that did anything at all. So yes, this film is made up of me and Nathan and the little mixed race girl who plays my sister. But we're the only people of color, and that's intentional. But it's never talked about. The film, yes, centers around technically this mixed race family, but there's never a scene where Nathan talks about his great granddaddy who was a slave, or that we eat fried chicken, or that I have to go to Harlem. It's just the way that I look. And it always seemed to me that that was the only real way to overcome, you know, an eternity of division, was to say that there were no divisions, not that there were divisions, but like everybody's still human.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very profound.
Well, I've been angry about it for decades, so I would hope it got somewhere good by now.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, Cassie DePaiva plays your mother, and I'm assuming you've known her for quite a while, considering that your father was on One Life to Live.
Yeah, no, Cassie and her husband Jim, they were around. They were definitely some of the. They've got a daughter who's about my age, and I think I had a crush on her when I was a kid. So definitely, I was around them sometimes.
Yeah.
No, yeah, Cassie was great. Cassie, I've been saying a lot lately that, because it's true. In the last like year, Cassie like famously beat cancer, got nominated for an Emmy, and then came to do our random little shoot in the dead of summer in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Cassie was a godsend. Like I said, the professionalism, obviously, her and Nathan have a great chemistry to begin with. But more than anything, it was like having the way she was on set. There was one day where she had like a scene in the morning and the evening schedule was a little up in the air. And we were like, we might shoot the scene. Like, give us a couple hours. Do you want to go back to your hotel? And she was like, no. And she ended up just hanging out with Nathan, who also wasn't filming that day. They like hung out in his studio. I think they like maybe played some music, maybe had some beer, and they were just buds. And then we like ended up not doing her scene. We went long that night, and she was like, you know what? I'm going to make everybody in the crew burritos. And then she did. She made everybody burritos. She made the gaffer a special burrito because he didn't eat meat or something. This whole massive thing. That was just kind of typical Cassie.
Yeah.
Because then the next day it was like hard-boiled eggs, but like the best hard-boiled eggs you've ever had.
Yeah.
She became like the movies mom too. And I think she was only on set for maybe 4 days total.
Yeah.
But the ease she brought calmed everybody. That she could be so well known and such a professional and take all of the insanity that is independent filmmaking just as in stride as she did, I think put my whole crew and my cast at ease. And that was amazing.
Well, she and your father both have that soap opera background, so they've, know.
One of my favorite things about her interplay with the crew was, like, the cast was like, oh, like, yeah, tell us about, like, you were set up for an Emmy, like, let's talk about actor things.
Yeah.
But the crew was like, you shoot an episode of television every day. Where do you put the microphones? And then we did like 20 minutes on how many booms they have on days and how they follow her around. And I love that. That was so, to me, that's the heart of filmmaking. That, I mean, we so often, all you see are the actors. Maybe you see a director. Maybe you see Aaron Sorkin, who's the screenwriter. But it's the cinephilia, the like love of the craft and the art and the history that makes it fun. A movie set is exciting because it's like going to camp. You fall in love with those people for 2 months and they go away, but you're doing something together always, and it's a shared passion. It's like theater camp, except you're hopefully get a movie out of it at the end.
Yeah.
So the nerddom definitely flowed through all of us.
So, what are your plans once you complete the film? Are you going to ship it around to festivals, or?
Yeah. I mean, definitely in the next couple of weeks. I think my job is I'm trying to hand the brunt of the editing off to another editor to really like take the air out and like give it a fresh pair of eyes so that I can start to find like a champion for the film. I mean, every movie needs somebody like that, but especially an independent film. It's my first narrative film. So yeah, we're looking at obviously all of the big festivals, a few which are great for musicals and music movies. And luckily my ethnicity, which might have been a problem 8 years ago, is suddenly makes me hip and marketable, and that's nice, and I'm glad that that's true. But yep, we're trying to hit all the festivals, sell it to somebody so that the whole world can see Cassie be my mom.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think that you are going to sing something from the movie.
Yes, I am gonna sing something from the movie.
Yay.
So, and actually I have my co-songwriter here who's gonna play the banjo with me.
Awesome.
His name is Liam Higgins. He's got a cameo in the film where he plays the best friend that abandons me at the top. So this song is called
hi, Liam.
Oh, he's coming right now. So this song is called Wilds of the West. It's
Hi,
Liam. This is Paula.
welcome.
Oh yeah, he can't hear you. She says welcome. He says
thank you very much.
You can be the translator.
Yes. This is, I think, maybe the third or fourth song from the movie. So it's a movie about folk rock, and so in folk music, there's a whole tradition and tons of history to that. And we tried to fit as many like traditional folk songs in as we could, songs that are so old no one knows who wrote them. This one we wrote, and I think it's the third track, and it underscores it's the moment where the band really syncs themselves up, and there's a montage, and there's lots of summer, and it's one of my favorite scenes, definitely. Anyway.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Right. Some nights I dream about the wilds of the West, when hope and a man's wits were all of the best. And all it took was to go outside and put it to the test. But when I wake in the day, I'm far from the wild, wild West. So now I listen to the moon song and I sing upon the tide. And I wander for a hollow where a man like me could hide. With forbidden love and outlaw games and a bit of good moonshine. Yeah, I wander for a hollow where a man like me could hide. I've spent nights upon the eastern days in the modern West, and it's hard to believe this land was ever the best. But I hold my peace and bite my tongue and set it against the test. In search of what's left of the wild West. I've seen prairie huts and mountain caves and near forgotten home. And I've tramped along the paths where once the buffalo did roam. western tones. But still I cannot find the west within all of Earth's great tone. So now I listen to the moon song and stand silent with the tide. And I wonder if it ever was or if it ever died. Or if we are now something that it just cannot abide. I hope it's just a hollow where the Wild West can hide. Some nights I dream about the wilds of the West, when hope and a man's wits were all of the best. Now it took us to go outside and put it to the test. But when I wake in the day, I'm far from the wild, wild west. Some nights I dream about the wilds of the West. Some nights I dream about the wilds of the West.
Nice job, guys.
Yeah.
Makes me want to see the movie even more. I wanted to see it before, but I want to see it even more now. So.
Well, that's entirely why we sang it just now.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and your passion for the movie, it comes through when you're talking. So I hope that everyone will check out the Indiegogo campaign and keep an eye for it when it comes out, and watch it.
Yeah, and definitely keep an eye out for all of the social media. They're doing a pretty good job on the social media, both for Karmic Release, which has all of the stuff we talked about, all the documentaries and the UPKIA and the Killian Instagrams and Twitters. We've got some bright young people making little behind the scenes stuff for us every now and then that keeps the fun up. And a lot of it is about Cassie and Nathan because they're so great.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, the Indiegogo campaign is still going. There's probably about 5 hours left on it now. If you're watching this on YouTube, the link to hit this campaign is underneath the video. If you're watching it from the post from my main website, which is paulatudor.com, the link is in the post. So you can just click on it and go right to it and check out all of the perks for the campaign. So help get this movie made.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, Taylor, unless you have something to add, that's pretty much it.
No, I think that's all the stuff. You know, the last couple hours, and come hang out with us on all of the social media places. The Indiegogo ends in a couple hours, but we're gonna keep on singing songs for you probably until your kids buy the DVD. So yeah. Hang out with us. We like to folk rock and roll with new people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was a fun interview, and I hope that you'll come back. And Liam, thanks to you too. Tell him thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd love to. Maybe whatever the next round of publicity is for the movie.
Exactly. Yeah, you contact me. You've got my email and everything. I'm sorry, what?
Maybe Nathan will come with me next time.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, bring him along.
I will.
He can answer some questions.
Okay. Have a great night, Paula. Thank you.
You too. Thank you so much.
Happy
Bye.
holidays. Bye.
You too.